Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first unit of the Research Methods module within our MSc Renewable Energy Technologies e-learning program. Well, let me start off by saying that usually engineers tend to take research methods for granted. We see research methods as just basically either something we do in the lab by way of experiments or something that social scientists do, and we really don't think very much through it. What this course seeks to do is to give us really a broad introduction to research methods, both what we do in engineering and in this case not just experiments, but also the broad range of types of inquiry that we do in engineering through the natural sciences, and also what is normally done in the social sciences. And you would recognize that in energy, particularly as you cut through from energy technology to energy policy, you need to draw into that whole range of inquiry methods, of research methods, to be able to achieve the objective. So as far as this course is concerned, there's this overview that I'm doing. There would be the introduction to research proposals, because quite clearly, unless you're doing something that you're funding yourself, so you just, in essence, just start off and do it, you usually have to write some kind of a proposal to the organization or the individual that is going to fund the project. Okay? And therefore, you would need some kind of research proposal. Even if it's not a question of funding, and there might be a question of approval. Either a department or a faculty or some group would have to approve the proposal or the research, and in that case you need to write a proposal to get this done. In the particular case of university thesis, you need to do a thesis synopsis, so we will look at thesis synopsis, and then as with all of these modules, there will be an assignment at the end for you to do and submit. So let's get going in then with the course overview. Now, in terms of the whole course, I mean, we will start off with this introduction to research proposals and thesis synopsis. That's what this one is about. But the second unit would look at engineering research, design, and data analysis. And a colleague from engineering would be the one who would take us through this. We would then have a unit 3 that's on social science research, design, and data analysis. Again, some colleagues in the Department of Planning and the Center for Settlement Studies, which form part of the College of Architecture and Planning, will be taking us through Unit 3. And then we'll have a Unit 4 that focuses then on statistical analysis. But statistical analysis will be introducing you to 2 software packages. One is Stata, that tends to be used a lot more by scientists and engineers, and the other is SPSS, which actually stands for Statistical Package for Social Scientists, and that tends to be used, obviously, as its name says, a lot more by social scientists. The last unit, that's Unit 5, would look at introduction to the writing of journal articles, conference papers, and the thesis, because clearly, whatever research you do, you want to write out a research report of some sort, but if you want to communicate to a wider audience, then you want to then prepare either a journal article or a conference paper. Now, in your case, as students in the MSc program, you will have to do a thesis. So much of this unit will focus on how theses are written and look at some typical theses that have been done here in the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. So, in terms of the plan for this course then, I mean, the idea is that we would have these video presentations that students can look at anytime at their convenience. But then we will organize these chat sessions where you will have interactions with the instructor. And these chat sessions are spread over a period of 4 weeks. So the plan then is that in week 1, we would have 2 sessions. One that would look at the course overview and the unit 1, which is what I'm doing now. And then we will have a second session, same in week 1, that would look at Unit 5, which is the introduction to writing of journal articles, conference papers, and theses. Then in week 2, we would have a focus in both sessions on engineering research design and data analysis. Week 3 would have a similar focus on social science research design and data analysis. And week 4, both sessions would focus on statistical analysis with data with SPSS. Now, I've mentioned already that we will have some guest lecturers for this course. Unit 2, the engineering research design and data analysis will be led by Mr. David Atokwanza, who is in the Department of Mechanical Engineering and a fellow of the Energy Center. Then Unit 3, which is social science research design and data analysis, that would be led by Mr. Usman Ponsan. He would also be supported actually by Dr. Udit King, but it's Mr. Usman Ponsan who is doing the actual recording of the video. Then in Unit 4, we would have on statistical analysis with data and SPSS, we would have Mr. Faisal Wahab Adam, who is also a lecturer in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. So these are the guest lecturers who will be supporting me in the delivery of this module on research methods. Now, there will be a lot of email communication, and I would expect students to address most mail generally on the course to me, but copying the teaching assistant, who would be Mr. Ebenezer Nyankong Kumi. All assignments of the course will be again submitted to the lecturer with a copy to the teaching assistant. Now, because there will be guest lecturers, they would each give you their email addresses, and then you would send your assignments to them, but then copy again the teaching assistant, so that we have a central point where everything is collated. Good. So now let's get into the meat for this unit, which is the introduction to research proposals. I thought I should start off by emphasizing the linkages between research, innovation, and education, and the fact that these are really interlinked. I mean, here you are now, most of you who would be listening to this video or watching this presentation, you are registered in an MSc program, which is part of an educational institution. As part of this MSc program, there's a number of taught courses, like this module, but you would also have your research thesis. So that already shows again the linkages straight away there between research and education. But at a deeper level, a lot of what we do in teaching brings out problems that we then take up in the research track, or either in the university itself, or in research institutions, or in research centers which are part of companies, either public or private companies. But then the part that really I think most people find fascinating is that research results, be they in the form of patents, be they in the form of new concepts, be they in the form of software packages, these then are expected to drive innovation within industry and within the society at large. Now, a research activity, research program that does not drive innovation, that does not lead to results in the marketplace, really is not very interesting research. So it's important to know that research results must feed into innovation, into industry and the society at large. And then again, problems from industry and the experience of implementing these research findings should then be packaged and codified into the educational system. So this knowledge will be passed on, and new questions arise, which then are picked up in research. So you have a virtuous cycle where new knowledge, new products are developed, they make an impact in the marketplace. Problems, challenges, experiences are captured in the educational system, so more people would know about this, and you keep pushing forward the frontiers of science, the frontiers of engineering, and the frontiers of knowledge, generally speaking. So those linkages, I think, are very important to realize that research is not something that is done in isolation, but it's something that is very closely linked with education and also with innovation in the marketplace in industry. Now, what are the types of research proposals? Well, 3 types are listed here as concept note, full research or project proposal, and the thesis synopsis. Now, the concept note is usually not considered a full research proposal. It's almost like an introductory research proposal. And the point here is that many, particularly where you are going into a competitive funded, externally funded program, The first thing they want to do is to have an idea of what it is that you want to study or what it is that you want to research. And then to do some pre-selection based on that. So the very interesting ideas, the ideas that have been well thought through, those are the ones that are picked up at the concept note stage. And then once that selection is done, then you go on to do the full research proposal or the full project proposal. This would be, if you like, a very common process for developing a research proposal. But it does not always have to be that case. I mean, I have experiences myself where I have done what I thought was a concept note, and the funding agency has decided that was enough and they would go ahead and fund it. Usually these are funding agencies that do large projects, and when you submit to them a concept note for something that is like a tenth of what they normally do, then they don't think it's worth the trouble of going through a full, project proposal just to look for a tenth of what they normally give out. So they'll say, just go ahead, let's get this funded based on the concept. But under normal circumstances, when you do a concept note, that would be the first stage, and then you would move on to do a full proposal, full research or project proposal. Now, there are times also when you don't even need to do a concept note. I mean, take for instance your in the workplace. Very often, in the workplace, when your boss decides that he wants something studied, there's some problem with one of the products that are coming out of the company, and he wants it studied. It's not a matter of you doing a proposal, a concept note, and him deciding whether it's interesting or not. He wants it done. Okay, so the concept note is skipped, and you then required to do a full proposal, which your boss or a committee in the company or organization would look at, and then if it meets their requirement, if it meets the standard, then they will go ahead and give you either the okay, because the budget is not usually the issue there, but where the budget is an issue, then they will ensure that the budget office or the finance office provides the budget that is required. So yes, quite often you do a concept note before you go in and do a full research or project proposal. But there are occasions where you would do a straight research proposal without going through the concept note stage. And sometimes also you might do what by all the guidelines would be a concept note, and then that would still be funded without having to go through a full project proposal. Now, the thesis synopsis is a particular kind of research proposal, okay? Because there again, it's not a matter of doing a concept and it being approved, or being selected or not. As a student, you're going to have to do a thesis. But as a student in the MSc program, you will have to do a thesis. So you go straight to the point. You will discuss, of course, with your supervisors the idea. You might go through several iterations of the proposal, but ultimately it is that thesis synopsis, it is that research proposal that you are doing. It's not a concept note, which then may or may not go to the full proposal stage. So in a sense, yes, the thesis synopsis is really a type of research proposal done by students within usually a graduate program. A concept note is a forerunner to a full proposal. So that sort of gives you a map. Now, as indicated under the full research proposal or full research or project proposal in this slide, the proposal and also the concept note, but particularly the proposal, would usually have a background section and objectives. We'll get into this in a minute. And then there would be something about the methodology. How are you actually going to do this research? What activities are you going to undertake? And then there are two sections that are critical for major research or project proposals. This is the logical framework and also the budget. I won't say more about it for now, but let's get into it. Let's see what comes out. So to try and lay out the process, as I said, you would usually do a concept note, which would lead to a full proposal. And of course, then you would go on to implement that research or project for which the proposal was done. And you'd be required to do some report at the end, research report, project report at the end. And this is a similar process for the thesis, because the thesis, remember, is a particular type of research proposal that does not normally go through a concept note stage. So you would do a thesis synopsis, then you would go on to implement thesis, which is the thesis research. And at the end of that, you would produce a thesis, which in many more ways than one is similar to the research report or a project report. So that's the kind of process that you would go through even for an MSc research thesis, as you will be doing in this course. So let's now look at the concept note. So the concept note, as you say, is a brief summary of a proposed research project, and it's usually prepared for donors or sponsors. I've said this already, that various donor agencies like the International Development Research Center, the African, Caribbean and Pacific Secretariat, which does an EduLink program. More recently, the African Union has also started putting out calls for research proposals. At the national level also this is done in our own country, or my country, Ghana. We have recently, the Energy Commission put out a call for research proposals and gone through to select and fund some of these research proposals. So the concept note is usually what you submit to the donor or the sponsor. And as I said earlier, and based on that, they would make a first selection or a screening of which project should then go on to do the full proposal. Now, the concept note should contain 3 or 4 sections. Okay, the first is the background to the project and the research problem to be investigated. The second is the objectives. Usually, you would break these objectives into main objective and specific objectives. And then the research method, the third section would be a research methodology and time frame for the project. Now, sometimes also you'll be required to give a summary of the budget or some indication of the scale of the budget that will be required for the project. Now, these are not absolute sections of a concept note. I mean, I've done many concept notes where we've only had 3 sections, where the methodology and the budget were sort of fused into one. And I've done many concept notes where the size of the note has been 1 page or 1.5 pages. So concept notes are generally brief. They are not more than a few pages long. I mean, if it's a big project, obviously, if it's $1 million, $10 million project, then the concept note could be 10 pages or more. But most projects that are in the tens of thousands of dollars, or even up to about $100,000 or so dollars, the concept note is not more than a couple of pages, 2, maybe 3 pages. And sometimes, as I've said, I myself have done many 1-page concept notes. The thing with concept notes is, unless you're given specific guidelines with specific specific page numbers, the shorter the concept note, the better it is. Okay, so as I said, I often aim to keep my concept notes to 1 page, no more, because you want the donor to read it. The last thing you want is for the donor to look at a big fat document and just put it aside and go to the next one. You want the donor or the sponsor to read that concept note of yours and be excited about it and say, "Ooh, this is a great idea. I want to fund this. I want to see this project happen." Okay, so concept notes, you want to keep them as short as possible. If you can do a half, I've never done a half-page concept note, but 1-page concept note, because to squeeze in the background, say something about the objectives, give some indication of the activities, the time frame, the budget. 1 page is about the limit. I mean, anything short of that starts becoming something else, which we will talk about later in this course. So anyway, the shorter the concept note, the better it is. And if you can keep it to a page, as I have often done, I think the better you are for it. So it's often as little as just 1 page, and normally should not be more than 3 to 7 pages, except for very large projects where it can sometimes exceed 10 pages. Now, these are contents of the different sections of a concept note. I said you don't have to have all of these as such in a concept note. You could, the research title is usually 1 line. Okay, so that doesn't take space. The background and the research problem are often fused together. The objectives, as I said clearly, are broken into main objectives and specific objectives. And the methodology, the project location, time frame, and so on can also be combined. In the background, you want to provide a review of the main research work or the current issues that are specific to the subject area or to the issue that you want to investigate. The background should contain what is already known about the project or about the subject area, about the topic. And it's important that the background is not the same as the literature review, because the literature review is a more detailed piece of work where you are indicating what the main contributors to knowledge in the subject area have said or have done. Okay. In a concept note background, you don't want to go through all of those details. You want to highlight the main ideas that have come out of research that are influencing the work that you are going to do. Okay, so it's not a literature review as such. It is usually background, 200 words or so in length. It's about a third of a page between the background and the research problem. It's about all you need if you are not required to do more than one page. Now, the research problem outlines, clearly, and it should do so without ambiguity, what the research problem is that is going to be investigated. And again, it should be short, as short as possible. Then the objectives. I've said you need to break the objectives into main objective and specific objectives. A main objective might be, for instance, to study the interactions between consumers and producers of electricity. Say that's a study you want to do. Now, what are the specific objectives? Specific objectives might be to design a questionnaire, okay, to be administered by email. Another specific objective might be to collate the results from the questionnaire and to analyze these results. A third specific objective might be to communicate the findings from the survey to a wider audience through journal articles or through workshops and seminars. Okay, so those are very specific objectives, all with the main objective of investigating the relationship between consumers and producers of electricity, for instance, or charcoal, or whatever, LPG or something else. Right? So it's important that you see clearly what your main objective is, and then you spell out again as clearly as possible the specific objectives of the research. Okay? Otherwise, you might set yourself some objective and not really realize it because your specific objectives do not do justice to the main objective of the research. Methodology is a section where you spell out exactly what the research work how the research work will be carried out. Okay? You're going to administer a questionnaire. What kind of questionnaire or what kind of survey? What kind of sampling are you going to be doing? How are you going to administer the questionnaire? Those are things you have to say in the methodology. Of course, in the concept note, you don't go into detail. You don't have the space. You don't have the time. The one who's going to read it doesn't have the time. So you want to give very brief. You want to be very brief and give a good idea of what it is you want to do. But that's what you should have in mind. That how are you going to do the research? Sorry, how are you going to do the research? How are you going to implement the specific objectives that you've spelled out in the objectives section? And then lastly, of course, some indication of where the project will take place, some indication of the time frame, whether it's a 1-year project, 2-year project, and roughly some idea of what the budget would be. A couple of $100,000 or $1 million or whatever, $10 million, whatever it is, you need to give some indication what the research is going to entail. Again, I've done concept notes where I have said nothing about the funding because the funding, one, was not the issue. When you're sending a concept note to the World Bank, the money is not the issue, okay, or the African Development Bank for that matter. The money is not really the issue. The issue is what is the idea? Is it relevant to their mission, to their own business plan? Does it address the problems as outlined in the literature? Those are the things that they're going to be looking. And will it contribute to policy and to development, in the country or region where it's being implemented? Those are the things that are important to them. Once that is settled, usually they will find the money to support it. So I have done concept notes where I said nothing about the money, but I gave an indication of the time frame and where the project will be carried out. So concept notes, there are no hard and fast rules. It depends very much on who you're sending it to, on what you want to do, and what stage of the thinking it is at. Sometimes a very preliminary idea, and you want to bounce it off some potential sponsors to see if they'll be interested. So you don't know at that stage what it will cost to do the project, but you want to see whether they are interested. Then once they indicate they are interested, go ahead and do a full proposal. Then you take your time and work out the budget, think through all the elements of the project, and give them a full budget. And of course, they would normally negotiate with you and often try and break it down. But depending on the concept note, the budget may not even be necessary. Good. So, assuming now that you've done a concept note, you've submitted it, and the potential sponsor has said, yeah, this sounds interesting, go ahead, give me a full research proposal. I'll give you a full project proposal. Then the question is, what is a proposal now? I mean, and there are many definitions out there in the literature, but one from the School of Advanced Study at the University of London says that a research proposal is a piece of work that ideally would convince scholars that your project has the following three merits: conceptual innovation, methodological rigor, and rich substantive content. Okay. Remember I said so about the concept note. You want to show in the concept note that this is interesting. There's some conceptual innovation here. There's something new that you want to do here. Or there's something really relevant or something really useful that is going to come out of this. So conceptual innovation is something that you want to show in the research proposal. But if you did a concept note, it already should have started showing in the concept note. Otherwise, most sponsors will not even let you go on to the proposal stage. Methodological rigor, you can only give an indication of the methodology in the concept note, but it's in the research proposal that you really have to show that you have thought carefully through the methodology and you have a rigorous design, or a robust design that really responds to the objectives of the research. So at this research proposal stage, many people are going to be looking very critically at the methodology of the research. And then of course the content, you must have rich substantive content. The proposal as a whole must be informative. If you have a logical framework, it must be well done. If there's a budget, it must be clearly laid out so people can see what the research really entails. Yes, so those three merits are key for research proposals. The research proposal should therefore provide a logical presentation of the research idea. It must illustrate the significance of the idea. It must relate the idea to past literature, and you must outline the activities for the proposed research project, as I said, as clearly as you can. Now, in terms of the contents of the research proposal, the contents are similar to the concept note, but you have a lot more detail. I've seen research proposals that are 50 pages long. I've seen project proposals that are more than 100 pages long. These are for large projects. Again, World Bank, African Development Bank type multi-million, as in a couple of $100 million projects. These are huge, big 200-page proposals. So the size of the different sections would vary according to usually the size of the project. But there would be a background section and objectives, which normally in a research proposal would be separate. This will contain a summary of the background information to the research problem and the context within which the study will take place. And you would outline the key objectives for the research. The methodology in the activities would also show a system of methods and principles employed in performing the specific tasks in this. And in this case, the specific tasks for the research project. And you would need to show a detailed plan of the activities for the completion of the research. The logical framework, as I said, is an important part of particularly of large research projects or large project proposals. And the logical framework is a tool that helps in the planning, monitoring, and evaluation of the project. You want something that would help you lay out your project, but also give you a tool by which you can check to see that the project is being implemented as per the logic which underlay the design of the project. So we will look at a typical logical framework in a little while. Now, the logical framework is a planning tool for defining the inputs, the outputs, the timelines, as well as performance indicators for a particular project. Remember, as I said, you want something that will help you also monitor the project and make sure that it's being implemented as per the original design or enhanced form. So you want to develop some indicators by which this monitoring can be done. The logical framework is usually presented in a form of a 4x4 matrix. And there will be a column 1 that states the overall objectives, the project purpose, the midterm results, and the activities of the project. There would be a column 2, there will be 2 columns, 2 and 3, which present the corresponding indicators and the sources of information. Because very often, well, not very often, sometimes people would say, oh, we would use an indicator of, let's say, district level GDP. Okay. But where are you going to get this information? Is it coming from the National Statistical Service or Statistical Bureau? Is it coming from research institutions? You know, where are you going to get the information in district GDPs? Okay. Or if it's an engineering project, you know, one of your indicators might be the rate of failure of the product. Where are you going to get this information, rate of failure? Is it going to come through surveys that you do on consumers every 6 months, every year? Is it going to come from a report that is done by a consumer association? You know, you've got to make it clear where you're going to get the information, the indicators, the information on the indicators that you have specified. And then there's a column 4 that presents the important assumptions that are beyond the direct control of the project, but need to be fulfilled in order to ensure a successful implementation of the project. Just the example I gave now about wanting to study the rate of failure. If you indicate rate of failure as an indicator for the success of a product, and you're going to get it from surveys. Now, your assumption is that the failure of the product is a result of the design of the product, not of some prevailing circumstances in the marketplace. Because if it is, then you've got to capture that within your survey instrument. But if your survey instrument is only looking at your design and how the product has fared, then you are assuming that the performance of the product is basically a function of just the design. So it's important to state the assumption, so that if some unforeseen results come up, you know that was not part of the original conception of the project. That was not part of the original understanding or logic that overlay, that underpinned the development of the project and the proposal. So that there on the screen is a typical layout of the log frame. As I said, it's usually a 4x4 matrix. So in the first column out there, you would specify the objectives, okay, the specific objectives, as well as the expected results and the activities. Those will be clearly spelled out. You know, in the case of activities, you want to answer what are the key activities to be carried out, and to what sequence, and in what sequence, in order to produce the expected results. Prior to that, you should have specified what your expected results are. Okay, so I recommend a very, forgive the use of the word, a very mechanical approach to developing the logical framework. To start off with the intervention logic, spell out your overall objectives, your specific objectives that should flow from the overall objective. And then for each specific objective, spell out what the expected result is. Okay. One or more specific objective might contribute to the same expected result, but you should say it. Or one objective might contribute towards 2 results. Again, you should say it. Okay. And then for each expected result, give the activities that you want to undertake. Some activities might contribute to more than 1 result, but you have to say it. Okay. And you must indicate, in your assumptions, why you are assuming that would be the case, or why you think that would be the case. Then, of course, in the second column, you would indicate the objectively verifiable indicators for achievement. And these must be objectively verifiable. Anybody should be able to take the source of information you have indicated and be able to verify whether the indicators are achieved or not. Then, of course, the third column is the source and the means of verification. And the last column is the assumptions. Then there is the detailed budget of the research proposal. Again, there's really no formula, but maybe not again, but in this case, there's really no formula for doing the budget. I mean, usually a budget would include, if you like, the personnel costs, some consultation, if there's meetings and so on. If there are any subcontracts, whether you are contracting some third parties to provide some services, equipment and supplies, okay, that's important. If there's travel, you have to budget for the actual transportation, but there's also usually per diems or out-of-station allowances that have to be paid as part of travel. Then any facilities that you would need, communication, internet facilities, any facilities that you would need, for the project, and then the administration costs and any miscellaneous costs that you can. Administration costs, you might budget for an admin assistant or a secretary or a driver or even just overheads, administrative overheads in the institution. You might want to budget for explicitly. And then miscellaneous costs are anything that doesn't fit under the main headings that I've mentioned, for instance. So I say there's no hard and fast rule, but this would be the sort of framework that you should use when you are preparing a budget. Starting from the personnel and then looking at the miscellaneous costs. Now, again on the screen is a typical layout of a budget coming from a reasonable size, a couple of €100,000 euro project. So the first group of items are the human resources, and then you total the human resources. It's good to indicate what the unit of the human resource budget is, whether it's per month or per annum, to indicate that the number of units, if you're talking about, say, a research assistant, and you are budgeting for a monthly stipend, so the unit would be a month, but then the number of units would be maybe 12 months or 12, because you are planning for a year's research project. If it was a thesis, for instance, a year's research project, so the research stipend will be paid on a monthly basis for 1 year. Number of units would be 12. Then you need to specify the unit rate. How much are you paying the research assistant? $300 for $500 a month. That will have to be specified. And then, of course, the cost would be the product of the number of units times the unit rate, which is the monthly allowance that you pay the research assistant. So that's a typical case for the human resources. You do the same for travel, as I said, and you want to limit, break it into international travel and local transportation. And I mentioned already that there's the actual physical transportation, and then there's also per diems that will have to be budgeted for in this case. Then you would go into equipment and supplies. Again, if you are purchasing or renting vehicles, if you are buying computer equipment, machines or tools, are you buying a lathe machine or some kind of a milling machine? Are you buying any machine at all? Any spare parts, any specific equipment that is needed in the machines that you are looking to buy, and any other equipment, and supplies that you think would be needed in this project. And then again, you would have a subtotal for that. A local office, the vehicle, office rent, any consumables like office supplies. You need to budget for all of those. And then you would have, in this case, other costs, publications, studies, expenditure verification. You might want to audit your accounts from time to time. If it's a 3-year project, you want to do maybe annual audits. You have to budget for this. Financial services like bank guarantees, bank charges, you need to budget for these. Any costs of conferences or seminars. And then there's visibility actions. This is done a lot in the African Union and the EU type projects. They want you to undertake, some press events, some media events, some internet website launches, so people get to know about the work that they are financing and the results that are coming out of this. And then you would have some sections for overheads, administrative charges and things like that. So that would be the typical layout of a budget for a project proposal. Now, as I've said, the research proposal is not the thesis synopsis is really a type of research proposal. So practically all of what we've said under research proposal would apply to a thesis synopsis, except that in the thesis synopsis you're doing it specifically for a degree, a master's or PhD usually, and therefore the university where you are submitting the thesis would have some guidelines. Literally every university has some guidelines for how the synopsis must be prepared. So they may not require a logical framework, or they may not require a detailed budget. This is a prerogative the university has. If you were supposed to look for your funding, they may not want to see that in the synopsis. All they want to see is the research idea, the fact that you've done a rigorous review of the literature, your methodology is well spelled out. That's what is usually of interest, in the academic sphere, particularly when it's for a degree that the university does not have to fund. So there would be some guidelines, and you have to check what guidelines pertain to the particular university where you are submitting your synopsis. KNUST has its guidelines, and that's what we've used. The examples that I would give here really follow the guidelines as pertains to the Department of Mechanical Engineering, where this MSc REDS program is being administered. So for a thesis synopsis here, you would need to have a background section and some justification of the thesis, of the topic. Okay. Then the objectives have to be spelled out. There would need to be a methodology section, a work plan, which is like the timelines, often including a Gantt chart, and then the resources that would be required. A library, a laboratory, a computer network. You need to spell out what resources would be required, and then the references that you have used for the research proposal or the thesis synopsis. And quite often we want to see signatures of your supervisors to indicate that you've consulted with them and that the research proposal has been done with their blessing, if you like. So this is generally the layout of a thesis synopsis for KNUST. I see the different sections are not different indeed from the corresponding sections of a research proposal. So there's no need really to go through them one by one. Now, to give some examples, I'll give two examples, I think. One is a research thesis synopsis that was prepared by Mr. Emmanuel Yabuause. Now, his title was a feasibility study for a wind power generation project in Ghana. As you know, well, in this particular case also, this master's program is about renewable energy technologies. The Department of Mechanical Engineering has supervised or has had a number of students undertake similar projects. So we can draw a lot from that experience. Now, in the case of Emmanuel Osei's research proposal, you can see under the work plan, sorry, I think, well, for this course, what I would do is I would send you by email the full thesis synopsis for Emmanuel Osei's thesis. Okay? And there you would see that the sections that I outlined in the preceding slide, have all been elaborated upon within the thesis synopsis. Emmanuel Osei did his thesis about 2 years ago. He's already graduated. He's out in the working world. But the thesis synopsis did indeed capture the various sections that I've spoken about, and it would be good for you to examine it. I don't think I really should go into the detail, but just to point you in that direction, and I will send that to you by email as something that is very similar to what many of you will be doing in the MSc REDS program. Another example is one that was done by Faisal Wahab Adam. Now, Faisal's topic was a study on the failure of femoral shaft implants. Femoral shaft implants are metallic pieces that are embedded in a person's hip or knee or bone. The part of the bone where it has suffered a fracture or where there's some ligament, breakdown. Now, this was a very interesting thesis that Faisal did. He worked closely with the doctors at the Konfanochi Teaching Hospital, and he collected samples of the implants that had failed, subjected them to test in the strength of materials laboratory, and then he did a survey also of people who had implants to see what the experience was and to see what the causes of failure as perceived by the users was. He also interviewed the doctors. So he ended up with a good study ranging from some laboratory experiments to some survey findings from both the users and the doctors. Very interesting piece. What I show on the slide there is his Gantt chart of the work plan, showing where he sought to do each activity, the literature review, the actual field research, the writing of the thesis, the first, the defense of the thesis, and the revisions and submission, of the thesis. Usually, I advise students in the regular mechanical engineering program to aim to have their thesis done within about 6 months. Okay. because once the work is done, it takes a bit of time also to organize the defense and the revisions and the final submission. So usually I would say 6 months aim to get this done. I would say more or less the same to students in this program, in this MSc Renewable Energy Technologies program, because if you start as indeed you're doing now, you really don't have more than, well, you don't have much more than 6 months. If you start now within this this semester and within the research methods class, then you have an opportunity of finishing earlier than the remaining 9 months or so of the program. Okay. So I say my advice is make it a point to do your Gantt chart, your work plan, so that within 6 months you have really completed the process for the thesis. Usually there are also overruns, okay, so it's important to give yourself some slack time towards the end, and even beyond what is your projected thesis, submission date. Well, so I guess the thing to do now is to look at the assignment for this module. What I try to do in this course is to use it to get students started off with preparing their thesis synopsis, so that at the very least by the end of this course their thesis synopsis should be done. So as I said, they have a good 9 months or so to get their research done in, and the advice again is to do it within the first 6 months of those 9 months. So you have some 3 months free time, if you like, at the end, just in case there's an overspill, just in case there are any delays. So for this assignment, what I'm asking for is that you prepare a draft of your thesis synopsis in both word processed and PowerPoint formats. The thesis synopsis in word processed format should not exceed 10 pages. The slides in the PowerPoint presentation should be designed to last no more than 10 minutes, and every student should be prepared to make the presentation in a live session during the 3-week residential segment of the MSc RETS program. As you know, we will be having a 3-week residential session as part of this program. Now, this year we are targeting the first 3 weeks of June. So every student will be expected when they come here to do a presentation of the thesis synopsis. Now, the other lecturers in the program will be present for this presentation. And it's important that this is very well prepared. Now, the thesis topics must be sent by email to the lecturer, myself, and it should reach me no later than the 12 noon, Friday, 23rd March. Of course, this will vary from year to year, depending on when we actually start the course. But a copy, as I've said, should always be sent to teaching assistant, and I've given the email address also to teaching assistant. Now, both the word processed and the PowerPoint format of the thesis synopsis should also be sent by email to me with a copy to the teaching assistant no later than midnight, 1st of April. And the assignment as a whole will fetch 10 marks. Okay. So I will wish you good luck. Please feel free to send me emails anytime between now and the submission of the assignment. And all the best of luck then. Good. Bye-bye for now.